Go live now button, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Pulling up the notes. Looks like it's working. Weekly scrap. Corley Moore, weekly scrap number 133. This is officially the Mega Scrap Bravo. Tonight, I am absolutely blown away with whom I am lucky enough to have as my guest. Jim McCormack, Bassel Ibrahim, Rob Ramirez. I'm going to keep the intros short and sweet. Jim McCormack is basically a genius when it comes to training and preparation. He is FDTN. If you don't know what that is, go and Google it as soon as possible. Next up, Bassel Ibrahim. He teaches the class One Bad Day, which focuses completely on RIT operations, proactive RIT, and the mindset to thrive. And last but not least, we have Rob Ramirez, my Cuban brother from another mother. He teaches the Mayday mindset, which is all about data-driven, street-vetted tactics and approach to training and how to be successful when the Mayday happens. So there it is. You might have guessed it, but this scrap is focusing on RIT and the Mayday. My brothers, welcome to 133, the Mega Scrap Bravo.
Thanks, Corley.
What's up, everybody?
Very, very excited about it. We have people logging in. I'm going to give you a few of the comments. Let's go. Great to be here. Let's get it. What a group. Really looking forward to this all-star lineup. Yeah, people are already talking about the lack of a mustache on Bassel. 100%. Okay. Is there anything I missed? Anything anybody would like to add at the intro?
No.
Nope.
Everybody solid? Audience, please get your questions ready when it comes to RIT, when it comes to Mayday, when it comes to preparation for those things, the training. Get your questions primed and ready. Kyle Romagus is monitoring the chat. He is going to curate the best of the best questions and send them up here for these fine panel to answer. So if you find value in scrap, go to firehousevigilance.com, support the scrap. All that being said, I want to say a quick backstory, which is the original Mega Scrap was Jim McCormack's idea. He broached the subject with me, and it was supposed to happen. And this was supposed to be the original Alpha. And now it's the Bravo, which is awesome. And I just wanted to make it sure that people knew this was the original one. But because of circumstances outside of anyone's control, here we are today. So, here we go. Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Opening question. Starting with the history and evolution of RIT throughout your careers, just basically how has it changed, how it came to be, and how it's changed during your careers. I'm starting in order of seniority, so I'm going to throw the question first to Jim McCormack. How has RIT evolved throughout your career?
Well, I would say that today, in current terms, it's more formalized. And what I would say is in the early to mid to late 90s, it was being talked about and being taught, but it wasn't necessarily at the forefront. So, fast forward 20 plus years and the same stuff is being taught. So nothing really changed there. It's just that it's much more readily available to a whole lot more people right now. So, we wouldn't have been doing this in 1996, let's say, but we can do this now, so it's reaching so many more people. But I think the early start of it in the mid 90s, there was guys like Bobby Pressa, Mike Lombardo, John Salka, Jim Crawford, Bobby Hoff, all those guys were out there doing all this stuff. And it just wasn't hitting a tremendous amount of people just because of logistics and the times. But the foundation of what we're talking about is from those guys and a whole lot more people that were doing all of this when it was just something else they were going over in the Firehouse. And really the evolution of it, it's like I said, it's the same stuff going on. So nothing changed for me over the years, except that it became more formalized and you had to have kind of a system that worked in delivering it so people retained it. So really that's, in a nutshell, that's my trajectory through it.
Robert, same question. How has it changed in your perception through the career?
I agree with Jim. In my short career, watching what Rit, as he was explaining before, was something that people kind of steered away from on the fire ground. There's an appetite for it now. We have more data that we're building on, and we're building on the foundation laid by the men that he just mentioned. And we're riding on shoulders of giants these days as far as like what we're doing with RIT and RIT operations. They become like, you know, Bassel's sure, I'm sure he's going to touch on it. They're more proactive in nature. They're data driven, and the guys they're embracing that RIT role more than when I first came on. You know, I've only been on now, 22 years, give or take. And in my time, I've seen it change where guys and girls are now looking forward to, you know, getting that RIT assignment and setting up for the RIT, staging in the right place, right tool, right equipment, training for it. And then at a national level, NFPA's embraced it more. Updates on 1704, you know, stuff like that. There's a lot of information that came out, and it's really, it's been cool to watch the progress of something that we're also passionate about.
100%. 100%. No, I love it. And then Bassel, what hasn't been covered? What's changed for you during the course of your career as far as RIT's evolution?
So the great part about going last after following these two is that they already answer all the questions for us. So it makes it pretty much easy. But I'm going to mimic and echo what they both said. You know, in my short time, really what I've noticed is the difference between the approach of RIT going from more of a reactive check the box type assignment to the more proactive, aggressive, fireground tactics. And with the data, like Rob just mentioned, over the years, we're able to actually quantify our tactics and educate more as to why we should do it more proactively. And I think with all that, it's making people want to do it more than back in the day. Nobody wanted to be assigned the RIT company back in, at least when I started back in 2004, 2003, 2004. So I'm mimicking that. We went from a stationary type assignment to a mobile serving the building, more aggressive type function. And I think we're trending in the right direction with all the platforms that are out there, which you can look at it both ways, good and bad. All the field conferences coming up and all this social media stuff. But you have to vet your instructors and then your data. But at the end of the day, the guys and the girls are still getting something out of it. They're learning. So I think we're trending in the right direction.
Awesome. Now, I want to interrupt before I go to the next question, and that is, audience, if any, I count on you to let me know if anybody's volume is too low or too high or anything. So feed it in if you're having any trouble, and I will try to adjust. Part of our adjustment is just how close people sit to their computers. So all that being said, let me know, and that's just the quality control of the mixer board. That is the distance. Okay, are we ready for our first question from the audience? I want to hit this. No, I'm ready for the audience, I think. I'll go straight to the BJ Breacher's throwing this at us, coming right out the gate. And he says, with numbers telling us since, well, to my knowledge, 2015, that RIT teams account for less than 10%. I think it's 6 on the Project Mayday, and crews already interior making up a vast majority of these RIT grabs, and RIT situations happening within the very early stages of incidents, often before the RIT team arrives. What does the future hold for the modern concept of the RIT team? Will this alter the modern fire services concept of RIT, or should we leave RIT alone? Awesome question from BJ. I will throw it. I'm just going to throw it straight out the gate to Bassel out the gate and say, what do you think?
All right. So just to get the data straight, the Mayday project data, which he's pulling the numbers from, the latest data just came out in March. It comes out every March, and the RIT affects 7.9% of the rescues.
Okay.
Last year was 6 point something, but it's still a very low number. But I think that we should look at, we shouldn't not activate the RIT team. We should have a RIT company on the fire ground, but we should also utilize the interior companies to give us, intel or potentially affect the rescue. And this is, I was going to touch about it when we started talking about command decisions and all of that, but this is why we shouldn't really switch tactical channels right away and all of that stuff. We can still do RIT without deploying the RIT team. if that makes any sense.
No.
So the RIT company should still be on the fire ground, softening the building, being mobile, surveying the structure, opening up areas, placing ladders. And when the Mayday goes out, if the Mayday goes out, that command officer should try to get as much information from the interior crews to aid the RIT company while simultaneously dispatching them for the rescue. That's my take on it, at least.
Jim, same question as far as the evolution in the data.
So I'm not a big data guy. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. I would tell you that I don't think anything changes. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you great.
I don't think anything changes. I think 20 years ago, somebody took and started to pay attention to RIT or survival, and we were simply teaching basic fireground skills. And so for really riding a wave of 20 years, we've been able to do more and more basic skills under the guise of RIT. So I'm happy about that. The guys inside, the numbers don't have to tell you that they've always been the ones solving the problem first. So, the whole thing about RIT in general, and it used to come up in discussions, everybody needs to be trained. Everybody on the fire ground. And early on, that was maybe thought of as the wrong approach, but finally guys came around because people inside are solving the problem. So I also think that as time goes on, one of the things we have to be careful of, and I've heard a lot of guys I know talk about this whole proactive nature of the RIT team. And we need to really define the RIT team as it relates to department size. The department that sends 12 guys on a fire, they can't really do the same thing as the department that dumps 30 on the fire ground at the same time. So, that 12-person department might not have a RIT team proper. The thing is, when we get to these bigger departments and we say, okay, the RIT team, we want them softening the structure. We want them walking around the building. All I can tell you is that if a Mayday does take place, they're probably going to miss it. And they're probably not going to be intact, or maybe not up to the level they need to be in terms of readiness to go in. So I know that those other things have to take place on the fire ground, but maybe you just don't call the team doing them a RIT team, because that's not really what they're there for. So I understand what happens on the fire ground, but the problem becomes nowadays that's in the forefront of discussion. So people may think, and like the question, I think it was BJ, right? We don't need to change it, but we need to look at what we're doing. RIT teams, as they are, they need the same training. We need the same level of RIT if we can have it on the fire ground. And we don't want to take away from that because the data says different. The data was the same if Don was doing his study in 1996. It hasn't really changed. So I could say that this whole thing is just like the UL studies, that all of a sudden people took and jumped all over the place because data said what they knew already. So I would just tell you, BJ, and for the rest of you, keep doing exactly what you're doing, because you're getting better at fireground operations. You're preventing problems from happening. And when they do happen, you're solving them quicker when you're inside. And, God forbid we do deploy a RIT team, they have to be ready to go. And we can't have them cutting rebar with a K-12 and they miss the Mayday, or we can't have them all over the place if a guy gets in trouble. The movement on the fire ground would be moving to the closest access point that their size up said would be where they needed to go to get a guy. But all these other tasks, maybe somebody else should be doing them. And that's what we have to tell chiefs. If you're going to move up the RIT, move them up, but get a replacement. Otherwise, what did you have them there for in the first place?
Right.
So I'm sorry it's a long answer, but that's what I would say.
That's what we do.
Take, Mike Lombardo always kind of makes a joke, and it's a better joke when you see him, but you know, about that fish that goes to the new shiny lure, and then he goes to the other new shiny lure, and then he goes back and forth all the time. And as a fire service, we do that often. And, you know, that question, and it's a great question, it's the same end result. You know, the fish in the bucket, and he's looking at that next lure that got thrown in, or the next lure, which is a concept people discuss, and not necessarily maybe the direction that they would want to go, because down the road they might be in trouble for it.
Rob, you're the data guy, and he brought up a data question, so you're closing this one out.
That sounds good. And there's a difference. After Jim talks, you can tell the difference between information and wisdom. There's an obvious difference there, and honestly, it really is exactly how he explained it. I've had this question asked to me before by smaller departments somewhere in the Arkansas area where they're responding, 7, 8, 9 guys to a fire. He's like, the chief asked, he's like, can I keep 2 of my guys outside just for RIT? Don't they serve me better in the building, putting the fire out, conducting some type of truck or engine work? Absolutely, yes. There is not a cookie cutter approach we can take at any form of RIT operation, whether it's and like Jim just mentioned big departments, small departments. It has to fit your department's needs and capabilities at a fire ground. If you can afford to put 3 or 4 bodies, now according to NFPA 1704, 4 bodies they went outside to do nothing but serve as a RIT function or a RIT role, then God bless you and your staffing. If you have the bodies to soften the buildings under that RIT capacity and still maintain some form or level of readiness, once you've identified the nearest and the fastest route into the structure, if a mayday were to drop, then God bless you. But if all you have is a limited number of personnel responding to that first alarm, and your next 2 mutual aid or automatic aid is 2 counties or towns over with a 20-minute response time, then get everybody in the building, because the more people we have in the building, the more likely it is for us to put that fire out, A, or B, we end up in a pinch, get somebody to get us out. Nice. That's what the data backs up. The data backs up that you're going to be in the building. And like he said, it's been the same forever. There's actually a study that FDNY did that started in 1989, and it ran from 89 to 2009 to 2008. And the data is exactly the same as Don Abbott's study. You're looking at somewhere between 6 to 10% for the RIT companies, whether it's stock units making the grab or the down member. The down member is found within the same amount of time. It's usually resolved by the down member himself or the crews operating in the vicinity or the member's own crew that he went in with. So the data is the data. It really hasn't changed over the last 3 to 4 decades. But it does justify small departments not establishing a RIT right away and maybe being better served with putting as many people in the building as possible. And it also justifies bigger departments that, they're very staff heavy and rich. And if they can afford to, you're going to drive a Lambo, I don't hate you,
Absolutely. No, and it comes tactics are local. So absolutely. Now, someone's got a phone that's buzzing like crazy. And so I have to ask, who's the culprit?
Might be this headset.
That right there, it sounds like a Dremel drill. Zzz, zzz.
That's his headset, sorry.
Okay. Well, if we can't fix it, we can't fix it. Basil, quality of life, if you can lean in a little closer, I think it'll pick up your voice better. I'm not sure. You have to check and see. That's the only thing, is they said your Barry Manilow voice combined with the Ivory Coast accent. And so, all right. Tons of good, there are a ton of questions coming in. This one's coming from Chief Shannon Stone. He said, can we get your opinions? When should RIT be implemented on residential house fires? He says, 4 companies, 2 chiefs. Some argue early on. Others say it makes it more dangerous doing RIT in the beginning instead of putting them to work on high priority tasks that stabilize the incident. Opinions. Who feels like grabbing this one?
Go ahead,
Jim.
No, my speaker just went off. Go ahead.
Okay. I think it's important that you define how you're going to use your RIT company. You can't just say we're gonna establish a RIT company or we're not going to establish a RIT company. First of all, we need to remember that we are there. We're not prioritizing RIT over, the people, the citizens, aggressive search, aggressive fire suppression. Right? Nobody is saying that by creating a RIT company right away. Now, if if you're utilizing your RIT company as a standby RIT, waiting for activation, like conserving your energy and so on, I would not recommend to do that if you have a low staffing department. You can almost, if you have a low staffing department, by doing all those outside truck functions, essentially, man, I mean, we've talked about it before, and I think Jim said it, and I'm saying it a different way than he's saying it, but RIT is all the fireground skills put together. That's what RIT is. It's truck company work. It's, ladders, forcible entry, saws, search, the suppression component. I mean, all those fireground skills are part of the RIT function. So you can just, if you have a low manpower department, you can call that RIT team whatever you want to call it, but get your guys inside doing, the primary, leading the engine company to the fire, putting water on the fire, getting your search. But you also need your guys on the outside. If you have 4 companies and a chief, you got enough people to do an inside-out approach where guys are doing VES, removing bars, throwing ladders, and an inside crew doing it from the inside. And at that point, if a Mayday goes out, then you use a dual RIT approach. You're going to try to use the inside companies to effect a rescue, and the outside companies already soften up the building by venting, taking the bars off, and creating egress. So it's a very dynamic question that he asked, but I feel that you can't give a cookie cutter answer. You have to define what the function of that RIT company is going to be. Is it going to be just a stationary, conserving energy, awaiting for activation, or they're going to be working, getting primed to get in if needed?
No, beautiful. And the questions, man, with the panel, it's always tough because Bassel, when if he covers something, and I'm not saying he did like immensely, although it's a great answer. I'm not. But if you don't have anything to add, don't feel like you have to. But anybody want to pile on to what Bassel said to Shannon's question?
I would say first off, and I just throw it out there because I think this is what leads guys into confusion a little bit. If a company's on scene working during a fireground operation, then for me, my mind says they're not really a RIT team. I mean, that RIT team would be standing by, repositioning to go in where they could. So that's probably a topic for another show, but just to understand where I come from. And then to answer for Shannon, I would say that there's many departments out there in the same boat, probably less, that don't have 4 rigs and 2 chiefs. And I'm assuming that's, I don't know, but maybe Shannon could chime in and say it's 3 engines in a truck or 2 engines and 2 trucks. The reality is a lot of departments don't have that, but most everybody, it seems, has now gone to automatic aid where somebody else is coming. So again, I would add to that question, if in that 4 and 2 response, automatic aid says somebody else is on the way, that would be another company coming in. But in the facts given, if it's a 1,200 square foot single story bungalow, you probably have a company available for RIT. I mean, there's only so many guys can do in that 1,200 square foot house. But if it's a 2,300 square foot ranch or a 2,300 2-story farmhouse, you may have more tasks to accomplish. So go back to the baseline training, and even in that department or any other one, train everybody that to understand what RIT means, because if a Mayday happens, one of those companies is going to have to be repurposed if it doesn't get handled by those companies inside. So, that goes all the way up to the debate of, guys having the discipline to not drop what they're doing and not continue to put the fire out if a Mayday takes place. But on the other side, if that crew's right there, they would do something. But then it also goes into the communication that's needed to make sure the chiefs outside, and there's 2 of them there, that understand exactly what's going on so that they can adjust their game plan. So It really is. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you show up, you should have the intention of staffing all the positions you need and a RIT company, and I would say two if you had the luxury of having it. Way back when Indianapolis's RIT policy came out, the one that they're currently under, there was a company sent on the report of fire and a second company set when it was marked working. So the first company sent was an engine company and the second was a truck company. And the reality was the chiefs were moving those engine companies up and putting them to work. But we also knew that there was a truck company on the way. And they also then got in the habit of, whether it was the chiefs didn't want to get reprimanded or yelled at by the admin, they would backfill those RITs when they used them. But that's a metropolitan plan, and that small rural community plan, hopefully it's automatic aid, but if automatic aid's 25 minutes away, then the reality is they have to run that fire and understand the cards don't have a RIT team in place for them, but they know if there's two companies there, one or the other is going to end up being a RIT if a guy goes down on the inside. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I mean, he's got a lot of companies around him in his location down there in Florida, and there should be plenty of access to companies coming in. It's just the timeliness of when they show up.
When they get there.
But, marking the checkbox to have a RIT team and then putting them to work, you don't have it, so don't mark it. Because at the end of the day, the fatality report, everything that comes out, you're going to get nailed for saying you had a RIT team and they were off doing something else. So just don't fool yourself. Just say we don't have the staffing to put it in, but we're working on getting the automatic aid or mutual aid to bring those companies in at the time. Don't let the fire get away from you because you were trying to staff an outside company at the expense of burning the building down. That makes no sense either.
Right on. No, beautiful answers. Rob, you want to add?
I do not. Thank you. Perfectly said.
Perfectly said. And Shannon clarified. He said 3 engines, 1 truck, 2 BCs. So he wanted to be clear on the apparatus that was arriving. So, but
it still probably wouldn't matter a whole lot. I mean, he's still got that third. The reality is all of America is doing, or most all of America is doing truck work based off of engines.
Right.
Because they're not sending truck companies. So, regardless of whether it's 3 engines or 2 engines, 2 trucks, the reality is the same. He's got 4 working companies there, and those engine companies in that department are doing truck work anyway because they need to.
Or 3 engines and a Tringen.
Yeah. Right.
I'm pulling you in here, Basil. Trying to add Basil in. Okay. All right. Moving forward. Chief Mo Davis out of Houston's asking, would the panel agree with the true backup line, in quotation marks, true backup line, not the second attack line, to act as interior safety, i.e. RIT? So I will throw that one. And Rob, you passed on the last one, so I'm kicking it to you first.
If I understand correctly, Chief Mo's asking if we can use a second backup line inside the structure to operate as a RIT team. Is that the question?
Do we want more clarification on the question? Because all I've got is, would the panel agree with the true backup line, not the second attack line, to act as interior safety, i.e. RIT? We'll get more clarification and come back.
So I think that, I think you can read through it almost.
Go ahead.
I'm going to stay away from saying that on deck status, but, I think what he's getting at is, would they be the eyes and ears if something happened? And I think by default, if a Mayday took place, they would be handling that most likely if they were backing up the engine and the Mayday was from the engine. I think it goes back to Shannon's question or even Mo's question out there. If the backup line was needed, then they really can't service that role. If the backup line wasn't and they were going to check exposures, then it becomes, is the exposure check more important than that backup on the inside? And I'm personally, I'm not a fan of saying I'm going to commit guys inside just to be the overseers of other guys working. I just think that we get in trouble that way, because if we're all breathing the same amount of air, sooner or later, we're going to get hurt because we don't have enough air.
Nice. Who am I
I'm
throwing?
gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and circle back then, Corley.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree as well. It's just not a fan of that robbing Peter to pay Paul mentality. The conditions will dictate immediate needs. So if we immediately need that backup line to go and service the backup line, and then Murphy strikes and you strike that Mayday. I mean, there's two things that we don't have unlimited amount of. One is time, the other one is air. So understanding the value of time and air, members in there already functioning as a backup team on a line, they're probably going to get to them first if they leave that line behind and not drag that anchor with them. If you drag the line with you, you're cutting into your time, your deployment time, and getting to the down member. Time is a very valuable resource. It's all we have. Proximity to the fire and exposure to the environment, time, that LD50 that you all talked about, got to get them out quick.
Right.
Get to them, package them, get them out. I'm not a fan personally. This is funny because another question we've been asked before, and again, it's mostly by departments that have that staffing issue where they need to like multitask companies. And if you find yourself, again, I know we're beating a dead horse, but if you find yourself in a position where you have to choose between immediate action and immediate fireground needs based on the condition, always, I would recommend the default to get people in there and put the fire out, and not create a standby team inside or outside of the structure, serving the role of a RIT team if you just can't afford to have a RIT team during the first 20 minutes of that fire.
Beautiful. No, I mean, it's great information, man. Bassel, do you want to chime in?
I think they covered it pretty well. If I understood the question, it's also going to be staffing dependent. If you have the staffing and the line isn't needed somewhere else, then sure, but it's going to be staffing dependent.
Right on. Which really,
I would say if it's coming out of Houston, they have the people, right?
Yeah,
So, but no one knows working there. If the question's coming from, is this something we would do in Houston? I would just say you got enough guys. I don't think you need to. And God knows you've got a lot of experience in some really tough rescue situations to understand the movement inside that had to take place to affect those, outcomes. And so I just think that think about the other guys listening that don't, they're not blessed to throw 35 guys on a fire. And, shifting that mindset sometimes. There is this, dilemma that everyone's trying to appease the standards makers, let's say. But the reality is, on the fire ground, you have to appease the fire ground and your own safety. And, a lot of times you can't meet all the things that they say you need to meet, at least not initially. And, they don't mandate it because if they did, they'd have to pay for it. So maybe they should mandate it, then they'll pay for it.
Exactly.
No, it's beautiful, man. Good stuff coming. All right. There are a ton of questions coming from the audience. So you guys good with keeping going with the questions from the audience? I'll get an order here. This one, whatever the question is, I'm going to go back to, we'll go Rob, Bassel, Jim on this one, no matter what it is. It's from Jim Platt. Gents, do you think there was a fire service event that changed or influenced the need for more training and or fireground RIT team creation?
Jim, my short answer would be absolutely yes. We as a fire service have a history of being reactive, and you can pull 100 case studies over the last 40 years that have each directly resulted in some form of new processes, standards, training. The answer is absolutely yes. You have the NANS drills, Denver drills, Phoenix studies, the list goes on and on and on. Those are just the ones that everyone knows about. But every time that we have a case study, we should be learning from those. It's our duty, it's been said so many times, to learn from these events and make sure that to give our very best shot for them not to happen again, and to honor the members that we've lost. So I think as an industry, most of the stuff that we're doing today in RIT should be and has been revolved around, action, reaction,
No, it's part of the fire service, 100%. You nailed it. Bassel, thoughts? I'm not sure which order I said, so I'm just going with it.
Yeah. So unlike Jim here, I'm very data driven because I don't have the amount of experience that he has. So I have to use data and experience and talk to people like him and a lot of my other mentors out there that's gone through those situations or, trained on it. And I learned from those guys' experiences.
Right.
So yes, just like Rob said, we learn from mistakes, from errors that other people made in the past, and data project and research, and really it's changed the fire service, at least a new fire service in the last 20 years. Like myself, we take the data, we adapt it to our respective agencies with our staffing, and we put it in trial, in training against the clock. And then we see if it works, and then we adapt it and tweak it and go on from there. So absolutely, I think, we have to learn from incidents. That's the only way to grow. Unless you live in it every day, right, and doing it, you have to learn from, NIOSH report, near misses, LOVDs, and just try to make it better.
And most of us aren't blessed with working at Jobtown, just Jobtown every day. So, or we all would work there. Jim, anything to add on the history and how it's affected things?
So I would say that, I spoke at the start about all those guys that were doing RIT training way back when. And, one guy comes to mind, Jim Crawford, with the Pittsburgh fatality, which is one everyone talks about, Bryceland Street. So in the early 90s that took place, and the fire service has its every 10-year cycle, right? And hazmat was the 80s, tech rescue was the 90s, and really 2000 to 2010 was RIT and survival. And I would honestly say, from then on, it's not really been a topic. It's been an accessibility to training. But Bryceland Street was one, and then 1999 in December was Keokuk, Iowa, which was a really small department. And then it was Worcester, Mass, which was a fairly large department. And it seemed like that was the true catalyst to push all this training into a formal state. Like I said, in the mid-90s, it was talked about, but that really kicked it off. And then to then go further, Phoenix had a fatality at the big supermarket in, I think it was 2001. And then that kicked it further. And along the way, Houston had a few and other ones. And then as time's gone on, there's been large scale fires that have kept that momentum going, but they kind of reinforce lessons learned way back in those other ones. And to be honest, we're not learning a whole lot of new lessons in these fatalities. We are seeing the same things, and it's just being used as, I guess, continuing the push. But, unfortunately, that wave, and like every other wave in the fire service, that wave kind of dies down. So we are in a lull period of all this. And while there's still people doing it, it's not with, I guess, the veracity that it was done with from 2000 to 2010. So other things have kind of taken over. Now it's out there everywhere, but not with that main push. And I think those were the ones. And so just realize there's always going to be a major fatality that will put people back on their heels and make them think about it again and move forward with it. But I do think those true catalysts were in the mid-90s and then the late 90s and early 2000 that kind of changed the game with people's outlook on RIT in general.
Beautiful. No, and it's good. And there's a lot of questions coming from the audience about staffing and whether they should be inside, outside, how many should be on RIT. And I think we've really touched on that quite a bit. So I'm going to throw one from Bill Cadelia. At you, which is looking for thoughts on radio programming. Jim, you mentioned this in the pregame when we were talking about topics to talk about. But he asked, pushing the emergency button on my radio automatically changes the radio to an emergency channel that gives me a direct line with the dispatcher. This prevents me from talking with anyone else on the fire ground. I am uncomfortable with that. I and many coworkers refuse to use the emergency button. What's your thoughts on? We can just go to radios right now and go any direction we want. I'm going to start with Jim because he brought up switching channels. But in general, let's talk about the emergency button first, and then we'll talk about switching channels.
So, we're not a big fan of the emergency button as a primary means to notify somebody of your problem. And it's one of those things that, historically, I'll speak to a fire in Indianapolis in 92, where they, in January of 92, they got new Motorola radios with emergency buttons on them. Not really a whole lot of training as to what they did. And then in February of 92, they had a terrible fire where they lost a couple firefighters and almost a third, and many more were injured. But a guy named Mike Spalding was trying to activate his emergency button, couldn't do it with a gloved hand, so he took his glove off and then activated it, and it didn't really do what it was intended to do. So fast forward a little bit, and I know that Charlotte at one time used to do the same thing, where you hit the button, it would transfer you to a different channel. And we just have a big problem with that. And I think Bassel alluded to it, we don't recommend switching channels, but that's from a line firefighter's mentality. The admin usually always recommends switching it, and there's always this disconnect between the two. Logically, it makes sense to reduce the amount of radio traffic, but information at the end of the day and tenacity is what solves these problems. And usually one doesn't happen without the other. So to kick a guy off into no man's land and now take him away from information that may solve his problem, or vice versa, to talk about switching radio channels and, let's say, take everybody off the channel and leave the RIT and the firefighter on there because we don't want to disturb him and make him change. I always say, if you're 8 guys on the fire ground, it's a non-issue. If you're 28 and you kick 20 of them over, are you doing an individual accountability check to make sure they switch channels? So you can't really do that. So I would say, be careful with the button, but realize the button should, aside from the channel changes, because it's all programmable. They can go in a computer and change everything that button will do. It does usually give your portable more power, and it also gives you a certain amount of time that you have priority over everybody. So there's a benefit, but I would always say, go to the Mayday, and we'll probably talk about what you say, but your Mayday should be given. And really, if a response to that Mayday comes from a chief, then I would question the need to push the emergency button to begin with, right? If the Mayday was responded to, it's a non-issue. If you kick it over to the other channel, the most important thing is it depends. Are you taught to give your Mayday before you push?
Right.
Because if you do that, the guy in the room right around the corner will never hear your Mayday, and he won't be able to solve your problem unless he bumps into you, because you'll be on a different channel and he's not on the same channel. So, sometimes, we lack common sense when we can sit in a nice clean room and come up with all kinds of decisions. We forget the simple, and that's all we can really operate with on the fire ground, because anything more complicated is going to get us in trouble. So I hope that answered a little bit. I mean,
there's a lot. Yeah, there's very broad strokes when we're talking about radios. Rob, throwing it to you because Jim covered a lot, but go.
I'm going to just pick up on what he said. We got to keep it simple, easily reproducible under stress. Let's circle back to how you wear your radio. Do they have access to that emergency button? Where's that radio sitting? Do they have access to it? Is it under their coat? Are they wearing it under off their collar with a remote mic and the lapel mic sitting somewhere in the action area where they can reach it? Even if you can reach it, it's not my means of calling a Mayday. If I have access to my remote box or my radio, I'm going to call my Mayday on whatever channel we're operating. I do not have a plan for hitting that button before calling the Mayday. I agree with exactly what was already said. I would not recommend that. I go right off the bat and call my Mayday on the radio if I have access to it. If a chief officer answers, then my solution to my problem should be in motion. If I get knocked off a channel, though, that might be an option. If I do suffer some type of fall, collapse, fall through, I get knocked off the channel that we're operating on. I'm in zero visibility. I'm wearing oven mitts. I can't find the button. I can't switch back to a channel. I understand where I'm going to be that day, or I understand an understanding of my limitations under a real Mayday situation. So I'm guessing I'm probably not going to be able to find more to skill my way back to the channel that we were on. So having an access to that button may get me the help I need. If not, in our system, if you grab your giant toggle switch on the top of the radio and go as far right as you can where it won't go any further, you always get a dispatcher at a fire. So you're going to have someone on the top two there who can patch you in to whatever tactical or fireground channel you were on that you were knocked off of. So there needs to be safety nets built into communications. I mean, without communications, I mean, we're pretty much screwed on the fireground. I tip my lid to the guys that came way before me and were operating with no handheld radios. I don't even know how that even happened.
Right.
And how there were even any firefighters left to continue this tradition that we have of ours. But there's data for that too. I'm not going to get into it, but communications, EAB buttons, emergency access, or whatever you guys call them in your regions, they're there. They're nice to have. In my case, they're nice to have, not a need to have. They're my plan B or C at times, depending on the situation.
Bassel, add to it.
So I guess I'm going to go against both of them.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Just to make it interesting. So, but no. So it's all going to depend on how you train at the end of the day. Okay, I truly believe that. For how many times have you guys on your fires, you try to get out on the radio and then you can't get out because there's too much radio traffic, or there's too much of this and you can't key up, or whatever the case may be. It's a pain in the butt sometimes. Okay, I disagree with programming your radio to where when you hit the emergency button, it takes you on a different TAC channel. So if you're doing that, I highly recommend that you switch that. But I think that everybody should be training on locating and depressing their emergency button, whether it's on the lapel or on the box radio, because it increases the reception. It makes you more noticeable, not just on the fireground, but also in the dispatch center. Like Jim says, it gives you an increased amount of transmission power, more kilowatts being transmitted. In dispatch, the lights are flashing. For us, when you hit it, it takes over every single other transmission. So it goes to all the other radios, including the dispatch. And that's happened to us last August. Okay, we have videos and audio just to prove it. The Mayday went out, they called it with the regular key up button. Nobody caught it. Nobody on the fireground, not even dispatch. They come back, hit the emergency button, and now they call the Mayday. So at the end of the day, yes, it is more difficult to find, locate, and depress that emergency button. The manufacturers actually, they do it on purpose. They make it hard because we accidentally can hit it all the time. But when we try to locate it and hit it, we can't because we don't practice. It's not our normal way of keying up on the radio. Our brain isn't conditioned at doing that. We go back to our muscle memory. So if you don't train like that, then you're going to revert back to the way you train, the lowest level of training.
Always back to the lizard brain.
Yeah, I mean, so what I say is let's not lower, I'm not going to say lower the bar because it's not really a bar, but we're not going to, instead of not using the emergency button because people have a hard time locating it, how about we train and we educate people and replicate those tasks? Like every morning when I show up to work, I check my air pack, I go on air, I let the pass go off, and I call a Mayday. I hit my emergency button. I mean, all these things builds their muscle memory, and not just there when I'm calm and relaxed and in the morning and I know that I'm going to do it, but we introduce those stressors when we're doing a functional workout or a training. Like my guys know that anytime we do any sort of training, we built in a Mayday scenario where at any point, any of them can just drop down and then we have to go in and call the Mayday and then go through the procedure just to kind of introduce that stress while we're stressed out already. So we're going off track. as far as the emergency button, for us, we're training to use it. So, but I guess it all goes back to how you program your radios. They're all customizable, so you can definitely get with your radio guys and all, and your dispatch center and get that program however way you want.
So I love it. I love the differing opinions and the different thoughts depending on how it's programmed, because there is a lot of options there. And then one thing that is different SOPs, different SOGs around the country, switching channels, and that's one of the topics that Jim wrote down. So again, I'm going to kick it right back around to Jim. Go in the same order. Switching channels. What do you think?
So I would add one more thing on the button and then go into the switching channels.
Go ahead.
At least in our system, when I worked with Indianapolis, when you hit the button, multiple transmissions would occur without allowing that firefighter to get airtime. So if you just think, and I try to tell people that please understand your system, not from what you think should happen, but what actually happens. So if you hit a button on the fire ground in Indianapolis, the dispatch center will call the chief. And because we're stuck in this two-way, double talk communication, they don't say, Chief, the emergency button from ladder 7A was hit. They say, Chief from dispatch. And then the chief says, dispatch, this is the chief, what do you want?
Go ahead, yeah.
And then they say, well, the emergency button was hit for ladder 7A. So that continues until they finally say, hey, ladder 7A, do you have a problem? So just understand, there's a lot of stuff sometimes that occurs that we have to add time frames to that stuff and then realize, okay, well, we just delayed this guy getting his damn message out because he didn't key up right away and say it for at least 15 seconds. So understand that. So, but to switch to the radio channels, I would tell you, and these guys have said this as well, we have to talk about what are you wearing for a radio? Where are you wearing the radio? Somebody called the other day and asked about this same question. And I said, where are you guys wearing your radio? He goes, in the front pocket. I say, so tell me, walk me through the steps, just like I just said about the button. Walk me through the steps of guys not on the RIT team switching. So that's a take it out of your pocket, find the button, hope that you get the right one if your radio doesn't talk to you, and then put the thing back in. And I would say, and I think Mo's on here, and he may be able to add to this because I've never talked to him about this, but one of the Houston fatalities in the residence where he was in the back of the house and it kind of collapsed on top of him, if it's my understanding, I think if I read in the report, they found 3 or 4 radios in the debris. And all I would ask is, where were they wearing those radios? Once a radio comes out of your pocket, just like a set of wire cutters or anything else, it's got to go back into your pocket to complete the task. And most of the time, if it's escalating, it doesn't go back in. Right. So the thing about switching is, I would say, where are you wearing your radio? Are you wearing a lapel mic? Does it have a talk back to the channel that you're on? You have to answer all those questions and then understand what switching is. We're switching because we think that's going to solve the radio traffic problem. So any MAYDAY and RIT policy out there should include in both, when the MAYDAY is given, and I'm going to be blunt, the line should say, everyone else shut the up, right? And it's got to start being taught for guys to do it. And then we have to build that on everyday fires so we understand it. Switching a channel is such an easy thing to talk about in a classroom. And you can never realistically train for it, because if you say we're doing it, they already know what the hell the drill's about. So to do it for real and not have a consequence, I think you're kidding yourselves. And ask anybody that tells you that's the policy to switch, ask them, have you had fires and you've done it? Or is it just what you've thought is going to work on this fire? And then go back to whether it's Charlotte, and he piped in, Charlotte is one that bumps off the channel. just to go back to that, and same with switching, in Charlotte where they do it, and with the other guy, and I forget the name who asked the question, and I apologize. If you're a company officer and you are teaching your crews to be on top of stuff and call maydays if they're in trouble, if we happen to be split or something, and you knew your department had a button that would kick him off the channel, as a boss, what are you going to tell your guy to do? Are you going to tell him to hit that button and then leave communication? I mean, take communication away from you? So I would say the same with switching channels. You know, we need to make sure that information is given. And we also have to understand the true difficulty with a fire glove of switching a channel to begin with.
Dude, there is so much knowledge coming tonight. I'm going to keep it same order. Rob, go ahead on switching channels. Anything you want to add on to Jim's wisdom?
Absolutely. Just try to curtail and finish that off. Switching channels, I agree with both of them. There's a time and a place, conditions, actions are going to dictate immediate needs. And I know we're beating that again. But if I'm working a fire ground with 10 people versus 30 people, I could operate that RIT operation on the channel with the 10 people that are probably going to get to this guy before the 2 or 3 members signed to RIT do. Even on a fire ground where I got 30 people, there needs to be that lapse. And I don't know what the number is. Maybe one of you guys can jump in on that. How much time from the time that the member calls his Mayday till you do decide, based on the number of people and activities on the fire ground, to switch channels to a separate channel?
Right.
There has to be some time there. You might have to play that by ear to allow the companies immediately around him and his own company to start some purposeful action to get to him, while simultaneously deploying the RIT team. But if you switch everybody off right away, all he has coming is that 7 to 10% chance of probability. You're decreasing their survivability tremendously by getting people off the channel. Ergonomics matter. A glove hand matters. I have to go back to that meeting mindset. If I'm the member that's down, here I am. I was making plans to go to Disney in the morning, and it's 2 a.m. and I'm laying in someone's basement. My mask is half knocked off my face. I'm losing air, and I got 2,000 pounds of floor and joist on my back. I'm trying to reach my radio. Hopefully I'm wearing it right. I can reach my lapel mic. And I'm looking for this orange button in the dark, with a glove, with an oven mitt.
Oven mitts, yeah.
And now when we teach these students how to react and how to communicate on a Mayday, you're not teaching the person sitting in the classroom that day. You're teaching to the person they're going to be the day of their Mayday. And that's such a difficult task to replicate because of stressors and rules and regulations that we're bound by as instructors. Beautiful. So it's a gradual process that, from day 1 to day 3, when you get these students, you have to work on, but it has to be addressed. And I don't have a black and white pretty box with a ribbon on top answer for this. I just do know that we have to keep the channel depending on the immediate needs of the fire. We have to keep the channel that we're on depending on the number of people operating at the fire. And if we do decide to get off that channel, it needs to be because we know we have a proven data that tells us if we get off this channel, this member's chance for survival is going to increase. Because I have people coming, his crew's looking for him. I'm holding this crew on the channel. I'm holding truck 1 and truck 2 who are operating on the same floor that they were on the channel with the RIT team. I've got 3 companies, his own and 2 others coming for him, plus the additional company from the outside. And I'm gonna remain on the channel with the member. But that member doesn't need to be on the ground or in the basement in my previous scenario with a mask half knocked off his face and 2,000 pounds of joist and floor on his back, listening to people cutting gates, setting up water supplies, going arrival, setting up staging, asking for assignments in the backyard, throwing ladders. All that air pollution, noise pollution does nothing for the down member except get them more worked up keep them in that lizard brain. So there's so much. There's not a real easy answer for me to give without talking for 20 minutes.
I understand. Hey, I understand, and it's always the challenge when there's multiple people. And Bassel, I've got to catch one bad day twice this year, so I'm very happy about it. But I kind of know where you fall on this. But hit it with anything you'd like to add to the 2 that really covered it well. But go ahead.
They did, and I'm going to reemphasize some of the stuff they said. Really, don't change channels initially. Okay. You want to try to utilize everybody that's operating on the fire ground to aid you locating the victim, getting your information, and so on and so forth. So why kick them off a channel or kick yourself off the channel if your radio is programmed that way, right? No, let's use everybody. Radio discipline, radio silence discipline, like Jim said, is paramount. We need to make that happen. Then once we made victim contact, let's say we found the victim, we located the victim, and we found out it's going to be, let's say, he's underneath a collapse, or it's going to be a prolonged extraction. Maybe at that point, that rig company can recommend, hey, it's going to be a prolonged extraction. Let's change channels or whatever the case may be. At that point, you should have a second alarm on the way and all that. But at least we made victim contact and we got the ball rolling, and you have a location, you have a direct a rescue squad there, and then you can at that point transition to a second attack channel if you decide to do so.
Right.
Also, something that a lot of people don't think about, when you switch to a different attack channel, well, who's going to command that attack channel? Do you have multiple ICs on scene right away? What if it happens, within the first 4 minutes? You have two chiefs right away. So, there is also that part of it that people don't really think about sometimes, that if you split the channels, now you got to scale your incident.
Right on.
So for me, let's just keep it at that, because we can't really talk about it for quite a bit.
No doubt. This could be its own mega scrap as radio communications.
Yeah. Don't switch channel right away. That's my recommendation. It's difficult to do.
No, 100%. Anybody want to add anything before I move on to the next topic? All right, I'm throwing this. This is kind of getting away from radios and away from this is getting into the mind a little bit and going, and someone, Gabby Gorostola, I hope I got the name right. Gabby Gorostola said, Bassel, and I'm throwing it to Bassel first because it was directed to him, then we'll run around. Can you talk about the fear growth cycle? Okay,
so essentially, I've always said, in my opinion, the fire service has two enemies: time and fear. Am I still low, Corley?
I'm adjusting manually as we go, but go ahead.
Close. I don't know why. Okay. So the fear growth cycle is essentially is that in order to grow and to get better at anything you do in the fire service, you have to go through that cycle. And it starts in the comfort zone. We're in the comfort zone right now, like for me and Rob and Jim is comfortable with everything. But the rest of us, right, just like Rit stuff, right? In order for me to grow and get better, let's say, talking about engine stuff, I have to go through this fear zone, which puts me in a vulnerable space. I have to, listen to my peers' opinions. I may sound stupid. I have to get past that fear zone. I'm not confident in the subject and whatnot. Then once I enter that, you reach the training zone where I can acquire new skills, perfect old one, deal with new challenges, and then I enter the growth stage where you conquer the objective that you set initially. You feel more confident, you start teaching and passing it on and so on and so forth. And that's the cycle really that should go on in the entire fire service. But you have to set new goals every time you hit that growth stage, because if not, you're going to go right back into the comfort zone. I've said that before. I know you've heard it before, but essentially that's what the fear growth cycle is without going too much into it. So don't be afraid to fail. Training is there for you to fail and learn from it and get better. That's the only way to grow, is by trying and failing and seeing what works and what doesn't work and moving forward.
Swinging back. No, beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. Very concise answer for something you spend a lot of time talking about. So absolutely. I'm kicking it to Rob, and then I'll go to Jim to close it out. When you talk about the fear growth cycle and fear as it applies to training, fear socially in just looking like an idiot in front of your peers and how we overcome that. But go, in general, go, Rob, take it away.
Just in general alone, just part of the adult learning cycle. We're in the business of adult education. We just have to keep training firefighters. Adult education is a very unique monster because the people delivering the information and packaging it up and interacting with the student has to have a good understanding of the way the adult human brain and ego works. You can't teach someone that thinks they know everything, anything at all. So if I'm dealing with a group of guys,
Beautiful.
and that's usually not the case unless you're at work, right? And you can't be a prophet in your own town. But if you're outside and you're traveling and you're teaching, you usually have a pretty receptive group of guys and girls that are there because they want to get after it. But the first thing you need to do, even yourself as a student yourself, or an educator, is understand that the people you're talking to are adults, and the adult brain and personality works real different than the child. You have to make sure that you make it realistic, progressive, effective, and data-driven. If you start overwhelming them with all these super complicated drills and skills, and do not explain why, do not simplify it for them, do not justify the need for it in their arsenal or in their hard drive or in their Rolodex, because they may come to you with a pretty full Rolodex. You might show up to a town somewhere where I'm talking to somebody who's Jim's time in the job. You know, I have so much to learn from this person. They're rich in resources. I'm just offering a way to do what I'm talking about, right? I need to make that efficient, realistic, and I need to get buy-in from them as adults, understanding that they need to make themselves vulnerable first. And in that vulnerability is growth on the other side of that. So I do understand the question, and I understand that what Bassel talks about is fear growth cycle. I've actually heard him talk about that before. So I'm kind of cheating and building what he always talks about. But it's absolutely applicable to what we do outside of the fire department. Adult education in our world is all the same. You got to establish the why, make it realistic, make it worth their time, don't waste their time, make it something applicable to what the position is, and then listen to what they have to offer.
Beautiful.
And move from there.
Beautiful. Jim.
Could you say it one more time, what the question was?
Just talking about the fear growth cycle, especially when it comes to adult learning, how to overcome it in training.
So I don't even, I'm not sure I fully understand it. I guess all I would say is that everyone's going to be apprehensive in front of other people. So let's just say that's going to be there for everybody. When it comes to skills, everybody's going to learn what they want to learn from it. And like, Rob just said, and Bassel was saying, anyone else that goes out and does training, the nice thing is you're preaching to the choir most of the time. They're coming to actually pick something up, or they're coming to practice more skills, right? So then it's simply, you understand everyone's apprehensive, put them in an environment and let them solve their problems and get these mini victories. That's what I would tell you. Or let them, go through and not solve a problem and realize you're going to let them do it again. So let them come out and lick their wounds for a little bit. And I think Rob said it, in some ancient Greek guy or somebody said, it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. And so when people come in and they don't want to learn anything, they're not. And they're going to take away from those guys that want to pick something up. But I think for any of them, people that go into this training, they need to go in, they need to burst their own bubbles and pick up a few things and then just repeat it. And I would just tell everybody out there doing this training, understand that in people, but more importantly, set your training up so there's multiple repetitions so that they can not do well only to come back and do well. Nice. And that victory is going to monumentally, bring them forward on the fire ground. And that's the whole thing. Every one of us needs to learn those things in a deep, dark, nasty hallway in training, so that in that deep, dark, nasty hallway, we've experienced it once before and we can adapt if something doesn't go right. So I hope that hits it a little bit. The thing is, everyone's apprehensive. Everyone needs to fail at some level, but 10 people going in a building doing a session, there could be 10 different levels. And each level of failure for a person is their own level that they have to overcome. So, you're not going to globally do it for everybody. Every individual's got to pick up their own thing and grow from it, and then just keep doing that. So, hopefully that adds to those guys. Those guys know it better than I do, but I think it's the same with it's human nature. And you're just catering to human nature on the training ground.
Beautiful. And dude, that was one of the best answers on the scrap of all time. Just all three of you addressing that. I cannot even stress to you guys how many questions are just coming in. There's over like 155 comments since it started, and probably half of them are questions. So Kyle is trying to pull out the ones that we've already kind of covered, but and throw them up here. Tony Nunez out of Florida wants to know, just to play devil's advocate for a few minutes. So I like this one. What do you all think or believe will be the weakest trait / link within a RIT team? And then he qualifies it by saying we can't say communication. So weakest trait or link in a team, and I'll go backwards from what I just did, and I'll start with Jim up top. Weakest trait to have on a RIT team. Weakest trait to have, yes.
Ego.
Ooh.
I'd say it's ego, you know, and it's going in, and I guess that would be the start of not sticking to the plan. You know, if you train on something, and I think highly functioning teams train over and over and over again, and this goes, you know, with all the stuff we're talking about, you know, whether it's the, you know, I could go at length about the new technique somebody came up with, which really it's just basic skills solve these emergencies. That's all it is. It's basic skills that solve them. And we tend to get polluted sometimes with so many different ideas on what we could do, when if we would just go do these simple things and get them done. But I would say ego leads to not sticking to the plan and then going off track. So I would say that's the weakest link, but a highly functioning team would have worked that out. Guys may be very, very confident, which may appear cocky, but the reality is they're so well-oiled that they don't deal with a lot of that stuff. And once you introduce, you know, an ego, basically, it's going to derail,
throws it off.
Yeah. You know, even the strongest guy if he's by himself.
Beautiful, man. Okay, Rob, I'm going back to Bassel, but I'm starting here, or continuing here. You get the next one. We're making it as hard as possible on Bassel to come up with something, but he's got time. Go.
I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to go with mindset. Mindset, in my opinion, has to be the weakest link, because you can be the best 5 p.m. hitter, but if your game time is at 7:30 p.m. in the live pitching, you may go 0-4 at the end of the plate. But during batting practice, you hit it in the bleachers every time. Meaning, skill sets could be very, very, very high, but if they're never applied under stress and duress, and we go back to like the old Rick George stuff and the studies of the psychology and physiology, your mindset's going to control your biology. Your biology's going to change: heart rate, blood pressure, respirations. We know that to be true. RIT teams breathe an average of 21% more than other people on the fire ground when there's data and studies. It's not because they're out of shape. It's because they're doing some real cool, freaking low frequency, high consequence shit. They're going after Jim, not Joe Public. I'm going after Bassel, not Joe Public. That changes my mindset. That changes my biology. And at the end of that formula is performance. If I can't control my mindset, my biology is going to change. If my biology changes, I'm going to decrease my performance. At the other end of decreased performance is survivability. Mine and the person I'm going after. So in my opinion, some of the best teams in the country at skills lack the mindset because lack of exposure to stress and duress as they're performing and practicing these skills.
That's 2 solid answers. Bassel, the bar has been set a little high. What do you got?
So we'll just go down the tier. Those are the top 2. I'm going to give you one that's kind of there. I'm going to say physical fitness.
Nice.
I think there's a direct correlation with physical fitness and fireground performance and air consumption and all of that. So doing this one time when you were new on the job, when you were probably in shape and you crushed it, doesn't mean that you can do it if you don't keep training at it and keeping yourself shape. So ego would have been my number 1 answer as well, but that ego encompasses so many subcategories. I mean, with ego problems, you got so many other problems that ego will drive you to, man. But so I'll say physical fitness. This job is not easy, and really I'm not going to say it gets easier, but if you keep yourself in shape, your recovery rate is going to be much faster, and it's just going to make it better on the fire ground. It's still going to be tough, but physical fitness would be mine.
Dude.
If you can't say ego and communication and mindset, then I'd go with physical fitness.
Hey, 100%. If you listen to that question, if you just put the title, it said ego, mindset, fitness. How good of a book is that for fireground performance, man? So 100%.
We'll get on it.
Okay, getting into specifics here. Here's one coming, and I'll go reverse again. So Bassel, you wrapped up, so I'll let you go first on this one. And it's a simple question, so easy one. Kyle Romagus wants to know what factors play into the decision to leave the RIT bag or attach it and drag.
Okay, well, to me, that's an easy. I guess it's circumstantial, but to me, it's going to depend on obviously your amount of team members on the RIT company. It's going to depend on what type of air management emergency you have, or if you have any. So let's get down to the specifics a little bit. If it's a high pressure emergency without a mask replacement or regulator replacement, where it's just the guy's low on air and we're going to transfill him with a UHC and disconnect, I will not attach the bag to the victim, because unless you have a plan on how to rig that bag to the victim, then it's a pain in the butt. So if it's a low pressure emergency with a face piece replacement, regulator replacement, or you have to buddy breathe from the RIT pack, then you almost have to attach it to the victim unless you have a lot of manpower and somebody able to hold the RIT bag close to the victim's face the entire time, which most of us don't have that luxury, and that would be kind of, I don't know, that wouldn't be smart, in my opinion. Right. Now, there are circumstances where you would have to do that. If you have to bring the victim through a super tiny hole, you may have to take the bottle off and pass the bottle or whatnot. But now we're really complicating things. I like to keep everything simple, honestly. So if it's a high pressure emergency, UAC transfill, where I can just give air disconnect and not connect the pack to the victim, I'm going that route. If I have to change the face piece or the regulator from the RIT pack, from the bag, then I'm attaching it to the victim. That's my short answer.
Right. No, that's what I'm after. Rob, I'm kicking it back around. Jim will finish up. So what's your take on it?
I'll keep it even shorter. I agree with Baz. Space, staffing is going to dictate it. The usual suspect is going to be a low air, no air emergency. Mass failures are infrequent. Regulator failures are even more infrequent. So if I'm setting up for the most probability, I'm going to deal with some kind of like, give them air, get them off of air, get them out of the space. If the space is too small, I may have to take it off. If he's going out a window, I may have to take it off. If he's going down a ladder, I may have to take it off. Otherwise, it's going to be give them air, get them out, make it fast, keep it simple, stupid.
Love it. Love KISS. Jim.
So I would say that it gets attached every time. And if a new RIT team came in to relieve the RIT team that was dragging them out and checked the air, and they found that it was empty, then they would swap it and potentially leave it. The whole thing about this air pack is it's just as much for the RIT team as it is for the victim. So why in the hell would I leave viable air laying in a smoke-filled building and then get myself as a team member in an emergency, bringing a down firefighter out and not be able to solve it? So all those other things about removing it for space or anything like that, you know, those are all dealt with in training. You know, you teach them how to bring them through low profiles. When they get to window, unclip the damn bag so it's not a pain in the ass coming down the ladder. All those things you do, but the reality is this thing goes in and it comes out because you may actually need the air yourself. I'm not the numbers guy, but I'm pretty sure if you look at the numbers, they're going to say RIT teams get in trouble quite frequently, and one of those problems is air. So you need the air. And the other thing I would just say, since we're talking about RIT bags, is stop being so foolish about the RIT bags and the size. In Indianapolis, you know, for a long time, we had this streamlined bag, a 30-minute cylinder, a high-pressure wand, a regulator, and a mask. The wand and the regulator were right there where the valve turned on the bottle, and the mask was on the other end. A large carabiner to clip it to the victim when you got to the victim. All these, and it weighed 19 pounds. And I have to say, you know, I'll call them out a little bit here, and other departments have done it, but I do know they switched packs a while back, and for a short time, they went from a 19-pound bag to a 44-pound bag. And I would tell you to go weigh your own bag and see how much it weighs, because I'd probably say it's pretty hefty. And that's one of the reasons people want to leave them. And the other reason is they're so big that clipping them to a guy actually causes problems. The reality is design it to work. And I would just go on saying, you know, our philosophy was we want to open one pouch and have a wand, a regulator, and the valve. The problem is with a lot of these bags, we got high pressure on this end and low pressure on this end. You are now requiring a guy to make a decision, and it could be 50% right or wrong if you think you're going to remember ball or tee, if that's, you know, one of the things I'm talking about. Put it there so it's a decision that doesn't have to be made. I open one hatch, and there's my air. And, you know, I could say regulator or wand, you go either one. You may not be able to get to the wand, so you might have to use the regulator. You may not be able to get to the regulator, you might have to use the wand. It may be a different type SCBA. Hopefully the wand is there. So, I mean, RIT packs are a whole big thing, but I would leave it on, and I would bring it with you so that you have air in the event you need it. And if you're a RIT team coming in, make sure you're bringing a RIT pack so that you would then be able to check that or hand off if you needed to replace that bag.
Kicking it back around to Bassel. Yeah, I see you,
I want
Bassel.
to clarify something real quick. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go.
Okay. So, Jim, I wasn't insinuating of leaving the RIT pack and then removing the victim. I wasn't saying we need to leave the RIT pack in the structure and remove. All I was saying is we will not attach it to the victim, but the RIT pack is coming with us. I agree 100% with you. The RIT pack comes in with the RIT team and comes out with the RIT team. So I just wanted to clarify that for, I don't know if I misspoke.
No, and so, but I think the question was, when do you leave it, wasn't it?
When do you attach?
Yeah, so, and I would tell you, the whole thing about attaching is now your rescuers are hands-free. And I would say that's a big thing. And the other thing I'm going to say is we're dealing with human nature in stressful situations. And if I take that damn 44-pound RIT pack, it's going to be very inconvenient. Would you agree? And so that means something that's inconvenient to a type A aggressive firefighter on the inside, what's going to happen to that inconvenient thing? It's probably going to get left behind. So it's better to clip it so you know it's coming with you all the time. That's our whole purpose of clipping it, because a guy's more likely to leave it if he has to now all of a sudden drag the victim and in a pinch because his partner went low on air and, you know, he was kind of freaking out a little bit, so it all got tense and everyone's kind of hyped up. That bag will get left, and then it's a problem that develops. So, you know, that's why I would say we clip it. But I think the question, you know, I may have misunderstood the question, but we would never leave it unless it was empty.
I think we all agree on no leaving it. And then, Rob, you wanted to clarify something?
No. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. I understand where Jim was going with that.
Right.
We're also doing the same. What's going in with us is going out with us.
In and out. No one's leaving it behind through training. I mean, no one's training to leave it behind. Now.
Correct.
All right. Solid. Joe Morrison asked, are you guys good? First of all, are you good? Because there's a ton of questions. Let me know.
Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
Joe Morrison asked, thoughts on RIT harnesses and sleds? And I will start with Jim. You closed it out, so I'll just kick it back.
Oh, yeah, you probably didn't want to start with me. So I would tell you that personally, I'm built on nothing more than basics. I'm a kind of a minimalist, and I just believe in that. And our philosophy, even at the training network, is basic, basic, basic. So We don't believe in a whole lot of that stuff. We've had great success for 20 plus years converting a waist strap and dragging a guy out. We've had great success amidst all the problems that have come to be because, you know, some of the packs, they disconnect, and they didn't used to do that. We went to bailout kits and they made the actual waist belt impossible to get undone because it had to be a rated harness and all those things. And I know people are going to disagree. They're going to say, well, we need to do this or we need to do that. I'm not willing to commit 4 pounds, give or take, to my pocket for a piece of gear to do something to a downed firefighter and carry that just for that reason. And, you know, so maybe if everyone's taking webbing, even with webbing in RIT operations, we don't teach a whole lot of use on it because we would have to teach everybody and everyone would have to be on the same page. So we believe 9 times out of 10, you can go in and you can handle this rescue without all of those extra things. Now, could you use a Stokes basket? You know, in a large warehouse, this guy's all the way in, you know, that might be the easiest way to get him across the floor if you had it, but it would have to have been a prolonged rescue so that you knew you needed it and brought it in. But any fast attack RIT team, which is what I would call them, any RIT team that's going in to find this firefighter and hopefully get him out, we want them taking a RIT pack, a thermal camera, and a set of irons and a tagline. And anything beyond that could come in if needed, but in an optimal situation, that team finds them and gets them started out. And so, you know, we're not big fans of any of it. So I know the other guys use different things. So I would just leave it at that from where we say, and just say that we've been fairly successful in everything we've done without having anything extra.
I like that. RIT Tick Irons tagline. I like that a lot. Bassel, I'm kicking it to you right here. Continue on with that. What's your thoughts on the sleds?
So I'm also not a fan of sleds or Stokes or any of the heavy, extra large things bringing in right away. We may need it at some point. But let's get there and figure out what the problem is and then request it if we need it. As far as packaging goes, I think that everybody should know how to do a SCBA harness conversion like Jim is talking about. As far as personally, myself and then my guys, we found that it was faster based on our training to use a pickoff strap, clip around clip, because we found that a lot of guys in our department and surrounding areas, they thought they were really cool and never wore their waist strap. So then they're down and we have to locate it and it's bunched up, and it would add a few seconds to the operation. Whereas if I just clip a pickoff strap from one side around back to the other side and cinch, it would take that away. Now, I still say that you need to know how to do SCBA harness conversion, because everybody that's in the building is going to have a pack. Not everybody is going to have a pickoff strap with them or an extra device. But the way we rig it, I mean, we have them on our RIT pack as the shoulder strap, and then we carry them in our pocket and it weighs a couple pounds. So that's how we train with it. And there's multiple applications. I don't believe in being heavy and carrying all these tools in my pockets. I'm also a keep it simple type guy, but that's a very versatile piece of equipment. I can use it for many things, whether you're on an engine company or on a truck company. And we use that for packaging. And that's what we use to tie off our RIT bag if we have to attach it to the victim for a low pressure emergency. So we just kind of put it to the clock and we tried it, you know, and that's what works for us.
So let me dig in real quick, and I just want to ask you a quick question. Real fast, short answer. Locking, non-locking, yeah.
Non-locking.
Okay, nothing to mess with.
Just for the sole purpose is that we had a locking one on there, and then when we took it out, it was locked, and we were trying to fumble around when you're stressed out and your dexterity is, it goes down, and your zero vis and all of that. It's just non-locking carabiners.
Rob?
I would recommend that you would keep it very simple. Just to circle back again to actions under stress, purposeful, effective, and again purposeful. Basically, if you're, whether it's a down victim in pajamas at 2 a.m. or a down firefighter in full gear, if you can get them out the door in a timely fashion by grabbing whatever you can grab on that person and getting them out, that's plan A every day of the week. Get them out of the space. We'll figure this shit out outside, right? But if I'm, and again, conditions dictate immediate needs. If I'm in a space where this member has to be packaged and lowered or brought downstairs or brought into a room or out of window or down the ladder, I'd probably take time to make time and go with some form of pick-off strap, not webbing, something that's pre-built. I personally understand that webbing is not going to work for me inside Ideal H. I'm not like I was going to tie some double flying weaker shore knot, which doesn't exist, but I'm being facetious, and zero visibility wearing other boots with a heart rate of 160. But I can pull my carabiner out, non-locking, like Bassel said, oversized beaner, find my connection points, circle around the leg, find my connection points. In the case, like he said, we have the same problem. We got guys who are too cool for school that don't wear their belt buckles, and or I anticipate finding the victim laying on the air pack where I can't access the belt buckle, and or we have over tighteners who tighten one side of the air pack and not the other. So now the buckle's not midline on the person, it's somewhere under the right or left armpit. And here I am digging around looking for it with zero visibility. And I'm trying to cut down time. And furthermore, if we look at the manufacturer as far as SCBAs and all that, and Jim covered all that perfectly, we understand the ratings for these air packs. They don't rate them because they have to charge for them. So the only thing rated on these air packs, regardless of your make, model, or vendor, there is new stuff coming out now, actually already on the market by one of the brands. But the only thing rated on there is that drag strap in the top. And they rate them for like 1,000 pounds of force in a linear freaking space. They drag them for 30 feet, 1,000 pounds of force on top of the air pack, and that's all they really do. None of the other harness and webbings and belts and automotive seatbelt type things are rated for any of that lowering on a rope system from a second floor, or lowering down the ladder, or bringing down the stairs, or jolting them repetitively out of a basement if that's what we're doing to an unresponsive member. So if I'm basically grabbing somebody and getting them out, all day conversion, all day simple grab, all day keep it simple, stupid. I'm going to be doing some type of extensive lower or haul or jolting. I will take time to make sure that I do secure them with a pick-off strap of sorts. And just to clarify, our pick-off straps, like the ones that Bassel uses, and the ones that have different grab points on a monkey fist or golf balls, they're preset in our pocket so that when they come out in a way where in zero visibility with an oven mitt, we teach and practice grabbing the air pack, hooking, wrapping, hooking, and pulling the monkey fist. It takes literally 30 seconds for us. And you're dealing with a piece of equipment that's already made for that system. So you can attach it to any type of hauling or lowering system that you built.
Nice. Anything to add before I move on to the next one? You guys are crushing.
I'd just say, remember, an air pack's an air pack. It was designed to give us air. And the whole rating system that's come to be is trying to make something that it's not. An air pack is an air pack, and if it did come to lowering, I mean, there's any number of ways to deal with that. Not to, speak against the other things, but just remember, that's one of those things, we tend to go every which direction. And, at what point when we go into a fire building, should I be worrying about if my equipment was rated for a lowering situation outside? How about I go in being prepared to put the fire out and stay out of trouble, and then should something happen, we figure those things out. But it's one of those things that happened, and then in training all kinds of stupid stuff happens, which results in more and more of this stuff being added. So just like these guys said, keep it simple. Just stop trying to make things something they're not.
I heard somebody say that, Jim, one time. He said we focus so much on getting out of trouble that we fail to focus how to prevent getting into trouble in the first place. So we focus more on not getting into trouble. We can place less focus on getting out of trouble in a fire.
Exactly.
Beautifully said. Can anyone, Justin Hanley wanted to know, can anyone speak on the Vincent Vinny Fowler line of duty death from 99 and the origin of the waste conversion? I don't know if anybody studied it or not. I have not, so I can't.
No, I cannot, and I'll look it up, but, I'm not sure if that was the original origin or not. I mean, guys have been doing it for a long, long time, so I can't answer your question. Sorry.
No, that's fair. That's fair. No one has no one studied it. No big deal. Brandon Bailey wanted to know, one debate in my department, and I love this question. I know where I kind of know where it's going to go, but one debate in my department is what information needs to be relayed initially from the Mayday firefighter. So the initial transmission from the Mayday firefighter, what do you guys recommend? And I will start with, I don't know who I did last. I will start with Jim and go back around. Is that good?
So I would say this is another one that gets absolutely ridiculous, and I think we tend to debate acronyms more than teach guys how to call a Mayday. So, let's just say, I think we can all agree that the word should be Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And, from there, everyone's got a different acronym or a hook. All I could tell you is that, we always taught guys that, I'm going to say it the way I would say it: Mayday, 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 McCormack, ladder 7, in the basement, low on air. And so whether I was calling a Mayday for me or my crew or something that happened, I would still call Mayday, 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 McCormack. So all this talk about accountability and safety on the fire ground, we all say we have systems. If we have any system at all on the fire ground, they ought to be able to tell where I'm working. Everyone should agree on that. I mean, they say they have these systems, but then, with a wink and a smile, they say it doesn't do crap on the fire ground. But the reality is, what we have to know is that, those guys that were chiefs on my fire grounds, if they heard Mayday, 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 McCormack, ladder 7, they should know where I was last. They assigned me there, or I told them after my assignment where I was going. But at least those first 4 words, there are 3 that and your last name, they should be for anybody, right? So people would say, well, say your location first or say your problem first. The whole idea of the Mayday is to let people know you're in trouble, where you are, and to come and get you, right? And so I think we get really polluted. I would say when saying a Mayday, regardless of your system, going back to that button, we would always say, call your Mayday, activate your pass, hit the button as a worst case. But your Mayday, you should grab the radio after you've tried to take a second to collect your thoughts, and then speak your entire Mayday before releasing the radio. None of this, and again, that whole double talk thing where some people out there think it's a good idea for you to say Mayday and then wait for somebody to say, who's got the Mayday, right? Give me a break. Call your Mayday, because once a Mayday is called on the fire ground, you may never get another chance to key up that radio and talk. So Mayday, 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 and then it's got to be who you are, where you are, and what your problem is. But the simple thing, that we always talk, guys, Mayday, 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 McCormack, ladder 7, working in the attic, the roof came down on top of us. And if we could get that out, they would know. If I said Mayday, 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 McCormack, and transmissions were cut off, I would hope that with all the chiefs they're sending to these fire grounds, they would have some idea of where you were working. If I went anywhere beyond that, then you would give them more pertinent information to solve your problem. So worst case, it would be nothing. Second worst would be Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And then you truly would have to call the dispatch center and say, who's Mayday, who keyed up, whose radio was it? And then go from there. So hopefully that helps.
No, it's beautiful.
Need to be more, and then it could go further, and you could say all kinds of things. And you know what? Leave your pass off until you say the Mayday, then turn it on. And then if you do talk again, if you have the wits and ability, turn your pass off when you talk on the radio. But keep that pass going, because somebody might hear it. And if you've made it something real again on your fire ground, you might actually have somebody find it because the pass was going off.
Beautiful. Kicking it to Bassel. Go ahead, and then I'll finish it up with Rob.
I agree with Jim. I think you need to make it personal. and just talk on the radio like you normally talk on the radio. So no need for all these lunar acronyms or any of that. Mayday, 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 engine one, Lieutenant Bassel, second floor out of air, whatever the case may be. Informal and personal. And like he said, giving the name is a big deal, not just your company or your assignment. And the one transmission, we have that built in our SOPs, even on regular traffic. When we call in, you know, Tower 1 in service or whatever, Tower 1 Orlando, we're not waiting for them to come back. You just give your transmission right away. It's your job to be paying attention. So yeah, keep it simple.
Robert?
Yes, sir. I'm going to keep it simple as well. I agree with both Jim and Baz. Keep it simple. Who I am, what problem I have, where I am in the building. I always talk about the mindset of the person calling the Mayday, asking somebody to remember an acronym. Again, in that basement, half responsive, half non-responsive, mask mouth off your face, seating on your back. I mean, that's the job of the people outside in the polyester shirt, sitting in the buggy in the air conditioning. If they need a lunar, they can extract that from me. Again, just like Baz said, making it personal and making it informal. No formalities. I'm not ladder 113 Alpha. I'm Rob. And my chief is not Main Street Command. He's Jim. Hey, Rob, this is Jim. Where are you, buddy? We're coming to get you. What do you need? Get your mask for me. How much air do you have? Do me a favor. Turn your flashlight on. Turn your pass device on. Can you reach it for me? He needs to get me back in the fight. He needs to get me thinking. He needs to be able to get me to where I can apply my training. If I'm down there in full flight or fight and I'm panicking, it's the chief officers on the other end of the radio's duty, I believe, to extract that information from me, get me to work to self-rescue myself, have me tell him everything he needs so he can get help coming to me. As far as I'm concerned, just like everyone else said, all the Mayday 3 times, Mayday, 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 who I am, what the problem is, and where I'm in the building. And let's get the ball rolling. No more formalities, nothing. I'm not a fan at all of getting these people who are in a knife fight in an elevator to all of a sudden start doing advanced arithmetics and remembering acronyms and whatnot. I think they've never practiced under stress. Let's get these people, and you know what? Going back to the training piece, if you're conducting some form of Mayday training or skills or an entanglement prop or some type of SCBA emergency drill, whatever the drill is that you're conducting for your members, for your students, it always, always, always has to start with a Mayday. Always. Because we focus so much on the skill and not on the communication. We have to get, as instructors, we have to do a better job. I can't tell you how many times I've seen drills start and end and the Mayday was never called. Or the student starts with, I'm going to call a Mayday, and then they just start their drill. Have them work through it. You know, practice is not perfect, but practice is permanent. If you never practice that, you're not going to do it under stress. When we're teaching somebody to call a Mayday or self-rescue, we're teaching a reflex. We're teaching a skill. We're teaching a reflex. When you teach somebody to throw a ladder or stretch a line, you're teaching a skill. When you're teaching Mayday skills and you're teaching survival skills, you're teaching a reflex. And that requires a totally different approach from the instructor.
Beautiful, man.
Pretty simple.
No, it's awesome, man. It's great. The value you guys have brought tonight already on the answered questions is unreal.
Hey, I would add one more thing that, and just all I would add to that is, you know, in Buffalo, they started using a locator phrase, they call it. So it would be truck 11, second floor to command primary search is negative. So that became something that they use all the time. So their transmissions are announcing their location every time they give a transmission. But that takes a lot of discipline for guys to actually do that. And I just say that because it would be one more, if you want to use the word proactive, it would be one more thing that could change the fireground because somebody else heard that. And if you did forget to say it, it would have been out there. But if it was ingrained in your nature of talking on the radio, then it's more likely to be said.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Good. I will start. I don't know where I start. I'll start with Rob on this one. Edwin Jimenez wants to know, we always train on rescuing unresponsive firefighters. Any tips for rescuing a firefighter who has become combative, disoriented due to heat, hypoxia, or other medical event?
First and foremost, protect yourself and your face piece. Okay? If they're combative and you're in ideation, zero visibility, you're trying to get a member out, you're gonna have to get the cooperation. It's not different than we do a bunch of drills where we practice and teach like face mask removals of a cooperative, responsive, or injured member. You have to have the member participate in his own in his or her own rescue. In the event that you're dealing with an uncooperative, and combative member who you're trying to rescue, you're gonna have to protect yourself first and foremost. Otherwise, you're gonna end up becoming a RIT. And honestly, it's short of manhandling that person. I don't know if you guys have anything else. I've never actually been asked this question.
No.
Create some form of barrier between you and the person and help to secure their peace and get them to participate.
Bassel.
Next.
That's a very good question. And I think training with mannequins all the time create that type of training scars to where we're not actually addressing the down fireman as a human, as a person. We do that in our classes. We use live victims most of the time, or all the time, unless it's live fire stuff. But and then the RIT company goes in and automatically starts like checking for air and checking the mask and then trying to pack it, doing all these things, and without even addressing the person, because they're used to training with mannequins.
Right.
Well, no, we need to address them, address the down firemen as people, as human, as our peers. So get in there, first thing you do, you just talk to them. Hey man, okay, try to figure out who that person is. They may not be able, if they're concussed or, lack of oxygen or whatever, they may not be able to tell you exactly who they are, or they may give you a wrong name or a wrong answer. Look at their shield, look at their name on their coat. There's all these different indicators that you could look at to kind of gauge who that person is, to make sure you're getting the correct fireman. As far as being combative, I mean, that's a good question, I guess. I mean, if he's actually combative and trying to fight you, I mean, you just got, I guess, to defend yourself or something like that. I've never really thought of that or encountered that. But what I'm going to say is, if you locate a fireman that seems to be disoriented or concussed, and he comes back to, don't let that person leave without being attended. If they can walk them out. Like, make sure that person makes it out with one of you, and then train to completion every time. Okay, hand that person over to whoever on the outside before continuing. But don't just, if they're already traumatized, their stress level are high, don't just take their word for it and just say, okay, man, here you go for it. There's the egress.
Right.
But treat the victims like people, like humans. All right, we need to stop treating and training with mannequins all the time, and we're building a false sense of success and security when we do that.
Jim, throwing it to you. Any tips on combative
I would just say, I think Bassel hit the most important. Don't lose the guy. The tendency is going to be to back off this guy and lose him. And I mean, you can go back to Phoenix and, study that one real well. And it's a problem. But, I honestly don't think that, and I don't, maybe understand the context, if it's a theoretical or there was some specific they were talking about. I don't think that combative nature is going to last long. For whatever reason, I think that state of mind is going to change quickly on that person, especially in a fire environment. So, you hate to say they're probably going to go unconscious, and you can't anticipate that they're going to go unconscious, but don't lose them and do whatever you have to do. And I mean, I could say whatever, but people will know, if somebody starts swinging or whatever, the bottom line is don't lose the person and then work your way towards the exit, if you have to. But realize it's going to take maybe more than just a couple of you. But I truly don't think that state of being of that person is going to last long. I
Very
think
long,
that's
right.
going to change, and then you have to solve the problem. So don't let it throw you off.
A very temporary state that will fix itself, and then you're just dealing with the down firefighter.
Yeah, I think that's what's probably going to happen.
Fair enough. Scott Feather wants to know, do you think par checks are really beneficial for accountability on the fire ground at 10, 15-minute timers, or is it more of a feel-good for the IC? Good communication. Okay, so basically par reports, how do you guys feel about them? Timed and untimed, called by the IC. What do you got? What's your thoughts on par reports? I'll start at the top with Jim and go.
So I think in a RIT operation, it's kind of one of those things that when we wrote the policy years ago for Indianapolis, we had what we called a negative par check. And that was the guy was supposed to tell you if he was missing guys, because we just didn't assume that crews were separated and guys had gone missing, because if they had, somebody would have called a Mayday or resolved the problem. I think you got to look at it and say we're jamming the radio if we're calling these reports. And in the event that there was some, catastrophic event on the fire ground, we would need to at least call it for the area companies were working. But, as a standard routine of operation for the fire ground, I would hope that the chiefs don't have to have a time limit to be paying attention where I'm working if they assign me to work on the fire ground. So I do think, to answer the question, it is kind of one of those check boxes that's become norm, which is now something that guys look to meet. And I would prefer they didn't meet a checkbox. They just paid attention to where the hell they assigned me and made sure I was there. And so they had a grasp on where guys were working on the fire ground. But when a guy calls a Mayday, I truly don't think that the best interest of that fire ground is for everybody to start chiming in. As a matter of fact, in our procedure, it was written that everybody else stay quiet and only speak if they could solve the Mayday or prevent another one from happening. So, if that makes sense.
No.
I mean, we're talking about trying to keep the radio clear. And, you could talk, and we talked about with switching channels. You can't ask a company if they're accounted for if you switch channels. You got to ask individuals, because you truly are talking about individuals when it comes to radio channels. If you're looking for companies on the fire ground, I think guys operating on the roof, when a guy calls a Mayday in the basement, don't need to answer a par check. And so I don't think that that's needed. If there was a collapse on the first floor and we had companies operating on the first floor and the basement, then I would say we need to at least isolate that area and call for a par check. And if not, we may have to go for the fire ground par there. But again, hopefully, we're talking here in 2022 about having all this fancy stuff on the fire ground to try to make guys pay attention to where guys are operating. Mm-hmm. So we still need to get better about just being on the fire ground, knowing where people are, knowing what they're doing, and then use common sense when we're calling for people. If I heard from him, 2 minutes ago, because he gave me a report, I don't need to call a par check now and have him answer in on that radio. So, hopefully that adds to it a little bit.
No, it adds a ton.
Less is more. We're complaining about too much radio traffic, and then we're throwing these things in at 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, and look at what we're doing for radio traffic.
Right. No. Rob?
I got nothing, honestly. That was perfectly said.
Basil? Sorry.
I kept thinking about what I could add, and there's nothing to add to that, really.
Okay. Basil?
I agree with him on the part check. Maybe touch a little bit on the air checks once the operation starts. Some of our commanders will ask dispatch to give them some of them do 5, some of them do 10, but air check interval timer on the dispatch side to remind them to check their air while they're working on the inside, because sometimes you get all tunnel vision working with all the stress and the noise and all that. But as far as communication on the fire ground and calling part checks, and there's so many different ways you could do that. Some agencies have dispatch call everybody and then relay that to command. I think it's a waste of airspace, obviously depending on the circumstance.
Sure. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Okay. I'm pulling up questions. Let me look. I'm pulling here. No, skipping that.
I would say while you're looking,
Yes.
I would just add into that conversation about, Bassel brought up about air checks. We haven't really talked much about chiefs and running Maydays, and all I would say is that the guy running the fire can't run the Mayday, and those air checks and accountability for that RIT team and the multiple RIT teams should be done by a chief on the fire ground. And many times it may be the chief running the fire that moves because he's got more knowledge, and somebody else moves in to take the fire. The reality is that information solves these problems, and while we may be bringing chiefs in to run the Mayday, if they're there on the fire ground engaged in active listening, then they can easily take over. If they're coming in or somebody needs to actually step in to do it, which I'm telling you, get somebody there now on your fires. It's going to be easier for, let's say, a captain or whatever your system is, if you don't have a chief, to move up and run a fire than it is to jump into running that Mayday. So, but then that whole host of what Bassel was talking about air checks, and the thing I would say about that, just for the chiefs or anyone running out there, let these guys do their friggin' work inside and realize that you can't keep talking to them. But on the other side, as a company officer on that RIT team, keep telling the chief what's going on so he doesn't keep calling and bothering you. So it all goes back, again, to radio traffic and jamming it up. As firemen inside working, what's the one thing that irritates you? And I could, use more language, is when the chief calls you and asks you what you're doing.
Yeah.
And all I would tell you, before you get pissed off, every once in a while, tell the chief what you're doing so he doesn't call you and ask you what you're doing. And in a RIT operation, we're coming from the, deep in the basement to the stairs to get into this exhaustive lift up the stairs. Tell the chief before you guys start lifting that you're going up the stairs, you'll give him an update. Don't let him call, because I will tell you, guys working, when the chief asks a question, it derails their productivity. It pisses everybody off. So all of a sudden, the guy keeps asking because the company officer or the RIT officer didn't tell the chief. So now these guys are getting deflated and getting pissed off when they shouldn't, but it's an emotional event at that point. So try to use that kind of proactive communication to solve the problem. But, that kind of got off a little. Make sure you got a chief running this, and then make sure that chief is out at the training, running the training so the chiefs know what the guys are doing inside, and that, packaging with, if you want to say packaging, is the harness and the air supply and getting ready to go, doesn't happen in 30 seconds. Unfortunately, time stands still or time moves at lightning speed, depending on where you are in the operation, right? For the chief waiting, it's standing still. For the guy inside with the chief asking, it's like, Jesus, he just asked me again. He keeps asking all the time. So realize it's a quite a dynamic operation.
Now, I was trying to think who said how long is a minute, and it's really just it depends on who you're asking.
Depends what side of the workforce you're on.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. Beautiful, guys. You guys have knocked out 2 hours of this, and so I'm going to throw one last question at you, and then we'll wrap it up if that's good with you. And we just I think we did, of our planned questions, we got to one of them. Let me see if I get my one of them.
That's a good problem.
No, and we've covered a ton of material. This one comes from Jacob Johnson, and I will start with, I don't know who I started with last, so I will just go with the original order, whatever my original order was. Jim, Rob, Bassel, okay? So I don't know if I've been unfair to people or not, but panel's input on assigned RIT team operations, what do you want them to see as far as pre-RIT activation? What kind of tasks do you think they should be performing as far as softening the building, not softening the building, other tasks in the area? Like, what's your thoughts on it? I'm starting with Jim, I believe I said. So
I would just tell you, this goes way back to the beginning of the show a little bit.
Right.
A RIT team, everyone, I guess, is starting to have a different definition as to what a RIT team is. So a RIT team, in my mind, is not another support company on the fire ground to do jobs somebody else ought to be doing. I would rather you call them another truck company and didn't have a RIT team if you're putting them to work, forcing doors and throwing ladders and all that. However, I can tell you in our system, we were a RIT team a lot, and, we had a 2-unit system. The engine went, usually they would get put to work, and then we would be the RIT team. So in that instance, we always approached the scene with 2 24-foot ladders, our RIT pack, our tagline, our irons, and we would, show up to actually be ready to be a RIT team. Now, if the engine that was dispatched as RIT was there, we would throw those ladders. We'd throw the ladders either way, but we would throw those ladders and get a nice 360 of the building, and we could do other things. If the engine had been moved up, we would get the ladders to windows, we would assemble together, and then we would do our 360 together, and then position at the point we thought best to move in. So this whole thing, I laugh about window bars a little bit because they've been around forever, talked about as RIT operations, and now forcible entry. I tell guys all the time, if we are a RIT team on, let's say, a strip mall, or, let's say a standalone commercial building, and the chief, we're doing our job, we're doing a 360, companies are inside working, and, we got another team standing by. We're walking around the back and we see an outward swinging door. And this is the bait I would give everybody. As a RIT team, before I get to that door, I'm going to tell 2 guys, hey, Todd and Dave, go pop that door open. And by the time we get up, I should hear a couple of strikes and then a big pop. And if I don't, I say, all right, stand down, guys. And I'm going to tell the chief, we got a couple of doors back here that need to be forced. You have a truck company you can send back here. What do you want to do? And I'm not even going to put in his mind, you want me to do it. The idea is I'm not going to bait the chief and try to get him in a vulnerable state and let him put me to work when I'm his RIT team. Hopefully that makes sense a little bit. So we would ask the chief, and then if he said, hey, go to work, I'd say, okay, we're the RIT, but yeah, we'll take the door for you. But if you only have one and you're there to rescue a firefighter that calls a mayday, then be there, position yourself at the best access to go get somebody that has a mayday, and that's a probability game. If you're in a building, they stretch to the rear of the building, I would hope you find access towards the rear, knowing your quickest route to those guys would be there. Perfect. And also understanding that they could be anywhere from the front door to that point, but you're going with probabilities. If you're going to do all these other tasks, just realize as a chief or as a company, you're not really a RIT team, because a RIT team to me is you hear Mayday, 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 and you're asking, for that chief, and I would tell chiefs running it, cut the RIT team loose. If you have a RIT team that's engaged in the fireground and they are in a position to go get this guy, you don't want him freelancing, you don't want him taking off. So cut them loose. Mayday, 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 McCormack ladder 7, trapped in the basement. I would hope the chief says, RIT team, go, I'll get you more information. And then that RIT team goes. If that RIT team's up on the 2nd floor cleaning out a window and another guy's around the back doing something else, you're not in a position to go get this guy, and you're fooling yourself if you think you are. So if it's a RIT team, and we're defining a RIT as a team on the scene to go rescue a firefighter in trouble, then their job is to be proactive in monitoring the incident, in taking information that they see and positioning themselves in a position ready to go get the guy. If they're a support team, then call them a support team. If you have the luxury of having multiple RITs, which I truly hope that everything now to this point has said we really need more than one team. And in a place like Indianapolis, we put 2 teams. Why? Because we knew it's going to take 2 teams to get the job done. So if we had 2 teams, and you can do that, then let one team be a little proactive with other tasks. But ladders for us were an every time thing. Those ladders were brought to the scene and they were thrown to a window as we were assembling to be the RIT team. So it was being done as a normal course of action as we approached the scene.
Right on.
So hopefully that helps. And I mean, it really is a definition. If you're doing anything but being ready to go get those guys, just understand maybe your definition of RIT team's different than mine.
No, and language matters, and defining stuff throughout the fire service matters, so it is good. Rob, add to it what you feel.
I'm going to try to say the same thing that Jim said with a South Florida Spanish accent. All right. So basically, I would agree with everything he said, and add some things, just what we do and the stuff that we talk about. JJ from Jacob Johnson, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So make sure you deploy your RIT team, bring the right equipment for the type of construction, bring the right tools, bring the right personnel. If your staffing permits it, and you can get 2 teams out there, get 2 teams. You can get 1 team, as most of the country does, get 1 team available. You can get no teams, then we talked about that in the opener. Just get in there and take care of the problem, and we'll figure it out from there when you get the next company on scene. As far as the building, the right tools for the building, down here we deal with a lot of like impact glass and hurricane impact glass and hurricane shutters and all types of issues, concrete, brick, and stucco. So our buildings are built different than the rest of the country. But we're not dealing with ordinary construction or balloon frame. We're dealing with buildings that are designed to keep the AC in and the hurricanes out. So if you got members operating in that space, it's imperative that our members on the RIT team bring the right equipment. Our air guy goes through his air systems as far as the RIT pack. Make sure all his bells and whistles are working, batteries are good, bottles good, looks good, mask is ready for deployment. Our RIT officer's conducting his initial 360 of the structure. He's looking for what that fire is doing in relation to the way that we're addressing it. Are actions adversely or positively affecting this fire in the way that we want it to? Is the fire overwhelming us? If it's not, where are our members operating? Are we on the first floor in a single story? Are we in a commercial building? If we're in a multi-story single family? Are our members operating above the fire? All these things matter to the incident commander and to the RIT team, where they should, because we can't control anything but time and deployment position. And I love that Jim talked about our positioning matters. Our positioning matters because once we get deployed and then they strike that Mayday, hopefully you're not waiting to get deployed. Once they strike the Mayday, it is your company officers assigned to RIT responsibility to let his members know if and when we strike, this Mayday does get struck, this is the way we're going to go in and this is where we're going to operate. I'm going to stage those people as near as possible to where the greatest amount of risk is being incurred by the members operating on that fire ground. So if they're operating in the Charlie Delta corner on the 2nd floor, ladders are going up, we're positioning ourselves in the 2nd floor. We're positioning ourselves outside on that Charlie Delta corner to decrease the number of steps from outside to inside. If we identify a door we can take, and it can be done in a manageable way with 2 person, then we're going to go ahead and knock that out. If not, I'm not opposed to getting a truck company to do it for us if the staffing permits. Also, we're going to sit there and monitor transmissions. Let that incident commander know where we're staged, and let them know that I'm going to be on the radio if you need us, and I'm going to be listening for those audible cues that normally prefix or come before a Mayday historically. We ran out of hose, ran out of water, I had a flashover, our smoke conditions not changing, or it's getting too hot, or I can hear a pass device in the background, or I lost my member, or what, all those things that we're used to hearing. We lost pressure. We're not at the fire yet, and you from the outside can tell that smoke conditions are changing. All these things need to be, you're not out there on vacation. It's not a play you got to take off because you got to sign your RIT. You're still a vital component of this game, and you're probably the most vital component of the game because the people that are in that building are depending on you. There is no other fire department coming to get them. They strike a Mayday. I'm sorry. So a short answer: right equipment, right position, right staffing, in the right location where the greatest amount of risk is being incurred. Monitor transmissions, understand what transmissions lead to Maydays, and make sure your team's ready to deploy as fast as possible geographically.
Love it. Basil, you gotta follow those 2, so you gotta wrap it up on the final question.
All right, perfect. So my mindset is a little bit of both those answers put together. Okay, we're gonna be essentially the way we do it. Our RIT company's initial job is to attempt to prevent the Mayday from happening. Okay, so we're going to do that by softening up the structure, just like Jim said and Rob, throwing ladders, staging our equipment based on the type of structure, where the emergency is happening, being mobile, conducting our 360s. I'm talking residential right now, okay? Commercial is a different ballgame, we need more The larger square footage, now we're getting into a different ballgame. But your bread and butter stuff, you want to be mobile, paying attention to the radio. The key is to remain disciplined. You cannot overcommit, and then, you have to be disciplined. Stage your equipment, be aggressive as far as unlocking, creating egress, and then you're the eyes. You're listening, you're watching, and then if there you need to get activated, then you're primed. Some people say you're getting tired. I say you're primed. This is where physical fitness comes into the whole thing. So at the end of the day, it all comes back to how you train. That's the answer to all of that stuff. It's going to depend on your alarm, your resources, how long it's going to take your second companies to get there. There's a lot of variables, but at the end of the day, it's all going to come down at how you train your guys and with your crews. So that's
Beautiful.
my answer.
No, it's a great answer. Jim made it back. I'm putting everybody back in here, kind of. There we go. This will be good enough to finish up there. Beautiful. That was the final plan question. Jim, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
You there?
You're there.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So I would add, I just wanted to say, and the internet went down, so, shit happens, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Believe me, I know.
so one of the things to think about with all this stuff we just talked about with this, walking around and doing stuff, Phoenix did the study, after Brett Tarver, and Indy did a study very similar earlier than that one. The reaction time for the RIT teams on a training environment to enter the building was 4 minutes plus. And so it's kind of unacceptable to be there and to engage in this Mayday and have it take you 4 minutes. But it was a repeatable, consistent time that it was taking guys to muster. So it just, even what Rob said, I would just caution guys to do a 360 by splitting the team. The team is not the team if one guy is off somewhere else and the rest of the team is somewhere else. So just, understand that as a RIT team, when you hear Mayday, 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 and you're on one of these McMansions with the boss out back behind it and your team somewhere else, it's going to be a problem. So get in the habit of moving as a unit so that as a unit you stay together. And if you have a RIT air pack, a tagline, and a set of irons and a tick as your main RIT gear, that can go everywhere you go. And so just be real careful, and then always go back and study what those guys did in training. That reaction time is unacceptable if you have a guy go down and it's taking you that long to get in the building to go find him.
Love it, man.
What were they doing, Jim? Like, what were they doing? Just throwing ladders and forcing doors?
It was a training exercise. Who knows what they were doing? They knew they were supposed to go to a Mayday and get in, and even in the training environment, it took them that long. So put them at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's pouring rain and they don't want to be there, and have that Mayday go when the boss is out back and the guys are doing something else. So just don't set yourself up for failure by doing these. I mean, to get a grasp and really think about it. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. You want the guy going. You want the team in the door. And if you're going to establish a tagline, which we would every time, you got to be there to establish it. You can't have the tagline someplace and then somebody running around to try to figure out where the tagline was. One of our benchmarks when the RIT enters the building is where they enter so that everyone knows where that tagline was tied to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So then the entry point is anywhere the RIT decides, but command may not know where they are at any given time because they are proactively engaging in that fire ground. And if they're moving from place to place And for all you chiefs that have your thumb on the RIT team, lift your thumb and let them do something if you want to shorten that reaction time and get these guys in the building. Give them some buy-in by giving them a say at how they look at that fire ground and prep to go get somebody that calls a mayday on the inside.
Nice.
Another eye-opening, if you're talking about the actual Phoenix study, another egregious or eye-opening, I shouldn't say egregious, but another eye-opening number on that, I believe, was a 21-minute total RIT to removal time. That sounds insignificant, but it was a commercial property. But 21 minutes is a long time. Like, how long can you hold your breath? How long can you be exposed to that environment as a down firefighter? That's a crazy amount of time, 21 minutes.
No.
We need to find a way to take a big bite out of that.
Well, come to our rescue class. It's going to take you 2 hours. But if you get the guy air and you protect him, that was your primary hit, right?
There you go. That's a difference maker.
Beautiful. You guys have absolutely crushed Mega Scrap Bravo. I am super proud. I feel like we barely scratched the surface too. That's the crazy part. 2 hours, and you're giving short, concise answers when you could go and dive off and give sermons on what we're talking about. Now, it wouldn't be a scrap unless I asked for book or books that you think firefighters should be reading, specifically for getting ready for one bad day, the Mayday mindset, just ready for training in general, fire department training. Talk to me. I'll start, and I'll go seniority. I'll start with Jim, and we'll finish this out. Jim, Rob, Bassel to finish out the books.
So I would tell you to get the Fire Note Firefighter Survival and the Fire Note Firefighter Rescue and Rapid Intervention teams. And the only reason I say that, obviously, is we wrote them in fireman language to go over the things that we would do. But, don't rule out Firefighter Rescue and RIT from Penwell. There's a number of books and even Company Officer Handbook from John Norman. I mean, there's sections in there on that. So there's plenty of resources out there. But, if you want a quick, easy read, read where you read best, the Fire Notes are your ticket.
Beautiful, beautiful. Rob?
Right now I'm reading the book Breathe. Funny, I have it sitting here on my desk by James Nestor. Pretty good book, simple, yellow book. And it talks about breathing, again, going back to mindset. Everything starts with our breathing. It's one of our most controllable factors under stress and performance increasing factors. It really circles back to a lot of what we do, and it's pretty adaptable to Maydays, RITs, and firefighter survival. So I'm about 1.5 chapters in. I started a couple days ago, and my goal is to get it done as soon as possible. But it seems to be a good read. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear the total review. And Bassel?
It's not directly related to, survival rate or the fire department. It's more of a, I guess, general life structure type book. It's called Atomic Habits.
I like it. It's a good book.
Really good book. It talks about how to structure your everyday actions to better yourself. It makes it really simple. There's a quote I wrote on here from it. I don't even know who the author is. It's an audiobook, by the way. I don't really read much. I know you hate that quote. That's why I said it. But, it says, success requires us to ignore immediate results for delayed rewards.
Love it.
And I think that's applicable to a lot of the things we do here in the fire service. Don't quit. Whatever you're doing, don't quit. Keep making small progress and be patient.
Love it.
It's the reward is coming.
No, and
whatever you're doing.
No, that's one of the secrets to being successful and being effective is what that quote is beautiful, man. Yeah. Absolutely.
Good book.
There it is. 133 scraps in the book. Mega Scrap Bravo. The original Mega Scrap actually completed. It only took us like 7 or 8 months from inception. I guess it's only about 6 months. Inception to delivery. Brothers, you absolutely crushed it, man.
Thank you so much for having us, man. Thank you so much.
The value,
great work, Cooley. Keep it up.
The value you guys brought tonight is unreal, and I can't wait to see the feedback. I can tell you this. I think we set a record for live comments, 262 comments of which most of those were questions that we couldn't even get to. Some of them were repetitive, of course, but you get the point, man. You guys absolutely destroyed it. My housekeeping. First, I'll say ways to get a hold of you. The best way to get a hold of you, people want to book a class, ask you questions, get more information, and I'll go reverse of what I just did. Bassel, I'll start with you.
Go to FDTN. That's what I say.
Thanks, buddy.
I mean it. I can't wait to freaking go, man. It's from everything that I see, I hear, I talk to. There's no better training that you're going to get. Most realistic. And this is not, I'm just being honest. As far as our classes, you can contact us through social media or, proactive rescue operations or any conference around. We'll come out and train with you and have a good time. Beautiful.
Robert. I like to say Robert. He says, only my mom calls me Robert, so I like to say Robert every once in a while.
100%. And Shane Bentley for some reason. Hey, first and foremost, man, I'm completely honored to be here for this opportunity. I've been looking forward to this. I know Jim's a humility personified. He's not going to accept it, but I've been a fan of his from afar for a very long time. And look into everything he does. FDTN's been a staple, and I'll echo Bassel. Get out there if you haven't. I need to get up there. I have plenty of friends that have been there and worked there, and it's a world-class facility ran by people that have been around for a very long time. We stand on the shoulder of the giants in this profession. Anybody that thinks that they don't, you're honestly mistaken.
Love it.
Okay. As far as getting a hold of me, man, if you're interested in the Mayday mindset, you can reach me on any actual platform, social media, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. I'm pretty accessible. If you're looking for any type of special operations class, technical rescue, you can reach us at National Rescue Consultants, nrc.com.
Beautiful. And Jim, finally, the best way to get a hold of you.
So I would say, the website, which is fdtraining.com, and my email that comes right in is on there, but it's just info@fdtraining.com. And, that's probably the easiest way. And, for the other two guys on here, it's been really enjoyable, and you guys, honestly, you're the future of this training. So keep up the great work, because that's what it takes. Guys years ago passed off stuff, and I've been very fortunate, and we pass off what we can, but then there's always somebody picking up that torch and going with it. And Bassel and Rob are doing that same thing in this category, which is kind of near and dear to my heart. So
very beautiful.
Keep it up.
No, and like I said at the beginning, the backstory was the whole idea for a mega scrap was Jim McCormack's idea, and I'll give him 100% credit for it. And there's going to be more of them in the future, each one specifically towards a topic, and it's going to be fun. But he actually picked up the phone and called me, and this is a feather you guys should wear proudly. He said, I want Bassel and I want Rob, and we're going to talk about RIT and Mayday. So that's a huge compliment considering the source. So
100%.
Love it. That's it. Officially 133 scraps in the books. Mega Scrap Bravo is complete. I'm going to do my housekeeping. Next up is the next scrap is coming live on location from Live Oak, Texas. We're going to do it live with a live audience, live interactive questions, plus the Facebook audience interacting at the same time with the same questions. We'll see how we pull this off, but we got a good plan. You're going to get Dennis Laguerre, Howard Reinwald, Kyle Romagus, Todd Edwards, Clyde Gordon, Mo Davis, and Jacob Johnson, all guests rotating through, answering questions. So it's going to be amazing. There's still tickets if you're in the Texas area down there, Live Oak. Get tickets, go to it, be part of the big first ever live audience, live Facebook at the same time, scrap on location. That's it, because after that, it's FDIC time. Super excited for that. And if you see me anywhere, Live Oak or FDIC or anywhere at all, get a picture, because I love the Mutts Don't Scrap. If the scrap brings value to your firefighter life, go to firehousevigilance.com and support it. Other than that, I have to shout out to Rob Ramirez, Bassel Ibrahim, and Jim McCormack for being unbelievably awesome tonight. The epitome of Mutts Don't Scrap, because they're on here today. Most of them staying up past their bedtime because it's Eastern Standard Time especially. But, guys, I cannot thank you enough, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Keep
for
it
having
up,
us.
Corey. Nice job. Thanks.
Mutts don't. Thank you, brother. Mutts don't scrap. I hope the tone stays silent unless it is burning. Stay safe out there.